In this section, we'll take a look at viewing the contents of files. Linux itself is just an elaborate collection of files that work together to form an entire operating system. With this being the case, viewing files will become very necessary as you explore the operating system environment. Many commands interact with files directly and will need to equip you with several so that you can appropriately navigate and alter the Linux environment. First command to know when you're looking at files is the cat command, C-A-T. Short for concatenate. What this does by default is output the contents of a file to your screen. As we recently interacted with the /etc or etc directory file passwd, we can try that now. We'll simply use the command cat and then the file we wish catted. The file is then concatenated or printed to your screen. If we had multiple files, we could simply string them along in the command and it would output the contents of both. Here you can see an example of two files being concatenated to the screen. In file 1 is the words hello world, and file 2 would contain the introduction to Linux command entry. By calling these together, the contents of both files are output to the screen. Oftentimes, however, as you concatenate these files to the screen, they have very long output and don't fit on a single screen. The less command allows you to display the contents of a file one page at a time on the screen. Let's take a look at the difference between catting the etc password file and using this new less command. When we cat etc password, we can see that there is a very large file that gets printed. If you were to scroll up, you'd be able to see this. If we needed to look at this one page at a time, the less command provides us that availability. Let's try to less etc password. Here you can see just the top of the file. You can navigate up and down the file using the arrows, up and down, or the spacebar to go a page at a time. When you're done perusing the file, the Q key will exit out. Sometimes we need only see either the beginning or the end of a file. While less lets us load up the entire file and navigate through it to browse, the commands head and tail will give us just the first 10 lines in the case of head, or the last 10 lines in the case of tail from the file. This can be helpful if you're looking to see if you've just added an entry to etc password, as those entries will go in at the bottom of the file. Additionally, when looking at a document, you may just want to peruse the very first entries to see what the purpose or contents of that file may be. Let's try both of these commands on the etc password file. The head of etc password should contain the first 10 entries we have within the password file. Additionally, the tail command would have the last 10. If we wanted a different number than 10, we can also pass a flag or option that allows us to specify the number of lines we wish from either the head or tail command. Both of these take a -n option. If we wanted to see the first 3 or last 3 lines, we could use either of these commands to do so with the argument -n3. Here, the head command with a -n3 of etc password would give us the first 3 lines. As I mentioned, the tail would do a similar thing for the last 3. Another helpful command that you'll want to utilize from time to time is the WC command, short for word count. The WC command can be used to count words, lines, or even characters of a given file. Let's try some of these options on the same file, etc password. By itself, WC will give us the output with 3 numbers. These 3 numbers correspond to the lines of the file, the words of the file, and the number of characters in the file. If we only wanted one of these pieces of information, we can specify with the flags -L for lines, or we could specify -W for the number of words, or we could specify -C for the character count of etc password. As we saw in each of those, we would have the matching value that came from the full output of etc password. That concludes our section on viewing the contents of files. I'll see you in the next section where we learn a very specific and powerful technique in Linux known as tab completion. See you there.